Sagar Rakshe. He's a lead SRE at 1-2N Consulting. He'll be presenting auto-scaling GPU-based ML workloads to 2 million requirements per day on the HashiCorp stack. Previously, he has co-founded a company called Codit, which was acquired by Sprout Logics. And on weekends, you can find him reading a book or cycling around the city of Pune. So with that intro, Sagar, take away. It's yours.
Cool. Thanks, Shantanu, for the kind introduction. Let me share my screen. It's visible, right?
Yes, it's visible.
Cool. So I think Shantanu already introduced me. Lead SRE at 1-2N. So let me talk about 1-2N Consulting. We are a backend and reliability software development company with a focus on helping startups with tackling the challenges related to scalability of the backend. We work with CTOs and VP of engineering of the startups to help them tackling the growing technological challenges as well. Experience with infrastructure engineering and distributed systems. So my entry into infrastructure domain was with, you can say, HashiCorp stack. Started with Terraform, and then got into Nomad and Consul, and it was pretty good, I would say. So agenda for today's talk, I'll walk you through the use case that we solved for a client, the scalability use case, what challenges we faced in between, and then solutions and workarounds around the different aspects of that solutions, the challenges, right? So the client had eKYC SaaS APIs, which were accessible via Android SDK to its B2B customers. This was deployed for a major telecom in India and needed to scale up to 2 million requests per day, right? So apart from the standard APIs that we have for SaaS-based application like authentication and all those things, the core APIs of this system were like face matching APIs, OCR, reading text from the documents. Since this is a eKYC based application, right? The business requirements were ensuring 99% of availability of the system, optimizing cost because we want to run the system at such a huge scale. So making sure we optimize cost for that. The SLA that we had agreed upon was having the response time less than 5 seconds for the 90%, right? So, yeah, let me just quickly walk you through the setup that we had. Let's mimic the request flow for a core API, let's say a face matching API. So the client SDK would make request to the NLB. NLB would forward it to the API layer, where initially you ignoring all the authentication flow and all those, just considering the use case of face matching, it would then store the images onto the menu. Menu is the object storage here. It's like S3 S3 service, but it's an open source platform. You can deploy it on cloud or on premise, right? Then you store data against those requests into database, and then the core part of the request, like face matching task, was put onto the queue, and from the queue the workers would pick up the task and do the grunt work. These are the workers. This is where we had the workers running on GPUs doing the major work. This is where the major time was spent in doing the grunt work, matching faces and giving the score or reading the text, right? And then writing the response back to the database. The client would keep on polling for the response. Now, in the next diagram, I will explain how this thing was deployed on cloud. Though this setup was the setup that we had created would work on both on-premise and on cloud. We'll take an example of the cloud deployment. So we deployed this on Google's platform, GCP. We had 3 medium-sized nodes where we had created a cluster of Nomad servers and console. So Nomad we used for orchestrating the containers and non-container workloads. Console was mainly used for service discoveries and storing the configurations for various jobs. And we also had a Portworx layer across these nodes. Portworx is a solution for running your stateful containers in production. So a couple of services that we had were backed by this Portworx for the storage layer. Then we had another set of nodes where the ML workers were deployed. GPUs were attached to these nodes. Now, the GPU that our ML workers required were only present in the 2 zones. So we had to balance these nodes across two zones only. Just a second. Yeah, the services, the APS service, RabbitMQ, Redis, and Minio were deployed on these VMs, and only the worker service were deployed on these VMs. Now, coming to technology choices, why we were running RabbitMQ, Minio, or Redis as a container, right? So, as I explained, we wanted this setup to be run on both on-premise and on cloud as well. So we wanted to have these components as common to both the deployments. So that's why we were running them as containers. GPU versus CPU, like why we were using GPUs and not like high compute machines. So ML workers usually perform better on GPUs. Second thing was we had to adhere to the SLA that we had. The response time should be less than 5 seconds. So we had also tested our ML workers on CPUs, but the response times were not satisfactory. So GPU was the no-brainer here. Now I had Nomad and Console. So Nomad, sorry. So Nomad was pretty simple and easy to use. Our team was well versed with the HashiCorp stack, the Terraform, Nomad and Console. So any addition of new member in the team didn't require a high learning curve to get used to the system. They could just get started quickly. We wanted support for containerized workloads. So Nomad was a great choice. And as I said, we wanted this to be an on-premise deployment as well. We didn't want a complex orchestration layer there. So Nomad was beautifully sit there as well. So yeah, Nomad and Console was the no-brainer for this runtime. Okay, now coming to availability. As we saw in the runtime diagram, we had split the resources across the zones. The important aspect basically in availability is to have redundancy in its critical component, right? So like taking care of the basic things like having VMs across the zones. What we didn't have was we didn't had failure for the region. We had intra-region availability, but if the region failed, the service would be down, and we were fine with that. Second, Minio was an important service for us, the storage service. In case Minio was not accessible for some reason, we would use GCS as the fallback to cloud deployments. GCS is Google's object store service, like S3 of AWS. Cloud SQL, yeah, we moved some components from running as a container to SaaS-based product, like Google Cloud SQL was one of them. So instead of initially we were running Postgres as container as well, but we decided to use Google's SQL for that service. RabbitMQ came later. So couple of times we had faced issues in production regarding RabbitMQ going down. So what we did was we did a small chaos experiment on our RabbitMQ cluster, and tune it to be reliable. So earlier we just had key on any one of the nodes across this. like this was our RabbitMQ cluster setup across the 3 nodes. So for some reason, if the node goes down or the RabbitMQ process goes down, we uh, we had to, like, the messages were lost and we couldn't do anything unless only the client would have to redo the request, right? So what we did was we mirrored the queue on another node. So even if this node went down, we had this queue mirrored, and it would immediately replicate on another node as well for higher availability. Okay. Now cost optimization. So the expensive component in our system was the ML workload, right? Because GPUs were attached to this and GPUs were expensive. And since we wanted to handle such a huge load, a million requests, we had to run several such nodes, right? So we wanted to optimize the system for cost. Nomad didn't have a feature where it could run multiple workers on the GPU. I'll explain in a bit more detail in next slides. Second was auto scaling. What we observed was the traffic was not evenly distributed across the day. It spiked mostly during the day and it phased out during the night. So we implemented auto scaling for saving costs there as well. So what was the uh, Nomad GPU issue? So imagine GPU has its own resources. It has its cores. It has its own memory. It has its cache, right? And we use Nomad's Docker driver to schedule our containers. But what was the issue is that Nomad's Docker driver wouldn't allow us to run more than one worker on the GPU. Even though GPU had the resources and it was capable of running more workers, it wouldn't allow us to just to do that. There is a feature request present on Nomad's GitHub page, still open. So the workaround around that was we use Nomad's raw exec driver. So using that, we ran our own bash script inside which we use Docker Compose to spin up multiple workers. So the issue was not with the Docker, but the Nomad's Docker driver as such. But Nomad had another driver, raw exec, which helped us there. Without this, what would have happened is we had to run just one worker on one node, and instead, with this workaround, we were able to run 4 workers, you can say, on a single node on that GPU. So that brought down cost by almost 4x for us. That was a huge win, you can say, that Nomad helped. Otherwise, this was a blocker kind of thing. We could have taken decision to move to some other platform or do something else. But Nomad saved us in a way. And now auto scaling. So we had implemented our own custom auto scaling because Nomad didn't provide it. By the way, this setup was done more than a year back. So some of the features weren't present in Nomad or the console back then, more than a year back. So we had to come up with our own custom solution on top of this. All right. So for auto scaling, Nomad didn't provide any auto scaling as such out of the box, nor did the Google's auto scaling solution fit our requirements. So we came up with our own custom auto scaling solution. It had 2 main components. It had a capacity predictor, and the second component was the autoscaler. The capacity predictor used to predict the workload in the next interval time. I'll explain more detail in the next slides. But these 2 components were the basis of that capacity predictor. Like, we tested out the capacity of a single node, and then based on that, we used to calculate the node requirement for the predicted workload. Second thing, we stored the request metadata. So the incoming traffic used to store the request metadata, like the type of request, timestamp, the request method, etc. So we could query the database and get the results, like how many requests were, like basic stats around the request. These two form the basis of the capacity predictor. Now, quickly going over the estimation of node capacity. So we had a testing setup where we ran a single worker node with multiple workers on it. Uh, and of course, the rest of the microservices are also there. We bombarded the setup with requests and with different types of like the request would scale up in a minute, or they would bombard at once. So different kinds of experiments we did here, and we calculated the percentiles of the response times. And based on that, we calculated how much load a single worker node can handle. Right now, in the autoscaler that we had was not a active autoscaler, you can say. By that I mean it wasn't triggered by any crossing of a threshold of a CPU usage or memory usage. It was a passive kind of thing. So the capacity predictor that we had, we invoked it every 20 minutes. Right now, why 20 minutes? Because we did experiments with multiple such time intervals, and this is what we found out to be the optimal. So I think whatever autoscaling solutions that we have, those are more like a art. There is no single stop solution for autoscaler. You have to check your traffic patterns, your business requirements, and then tune the existing autoscaling solutions or the custom autoscalers, right? So we run this capacity predictor every 20 minutes. What this used to do is get the request for the last hour. Yeah, and we broke that into 20 minutes intervals. So let's say this was the pattern that we saw in the last hour. We predicted the load for the next 20th minute. This was a simple mathematical function, nothing ML kind of thing, because we weren't a prediction company. We just wanted things to work fine. So based on this in request, we already knew the capacity of a single workload. By doing simple calculation, we know how many number of workers we need to run. Right. So yeah, the second input was what was the current worker count. Then it used to tell what is the desired node count, which was input to the custom autoscaler. Then custom autoscaler would scale up or scale down based on the event type. Send alerts onto the Slack once that is done. We also had manual override. So in case, since this was a passive autoscaler, if in between this 20 minutes we saw a huge spike, I mean, or anywhere during the day we saw an anomalies, we could manually override. We hardly use this, but there was an option to override these things. Couple of other things this capacity predictor also considered was with this request rate for last hour, it also used to consider the day, like whether it's a weekday or weekend, because we usually saw the traffic to be less on weekends and mostly higher on the weekdays. Other thing was the GPU VMs were live migrated, and that caused VMs to be restarted. So I'll explain that in more detail in coming slides. But for that event, the capacity predictor used to scale an additional load. Right. So what were the challenges in this auto scaling solution? The worker readiness. Now, when the autoscaler scaled up the nodes, uh, the time taken by the worker to start like boot up and start picking the request from the queue was huge. So we wanted to optimize that time. So ML model load time, while the workers were booting, they had to load the models in memory and then start picking the requests. So we optimized did some optimization over there. Like earlier they used to store all the history of the models, which were not necessary. We identified few memory leaks during this process, which reduced further errors. GPU VM migration, I'll explain this in a bit. We had a custom rolling deployment. Why we had to do that? And service dependency. So basically service dependencies, let's say your service A depends on service B. So we had to manually remember that dependency flow and make sure B is deployed and running after before A is deployed, right? So how we handle these things. So for worker readiness, the initial flow was whenever the autoscaler triggered auto scaling, it would create the node, run Ansible, pull the Docker image, pull the ML models, and run the Nomad job. The total time taken for this process was 26 minutes. That was mainly because the Docker image was around 7 GBs, ML models were around of the same size. And in this part, we used to install CUDA on the nodes. So what we did was create an image out of these three steps. So next time, whenever the autoscaler used to create node, it used to create using this image. And once the node is up, run the Nomad job. Yeah, so we reduce the time from 26 to 6 minutes. Further optimization we did was, instead of creating and destroying the node for every scale up or scale down event, what we did was we provisioned few pre-provisioned nodes, you can say warm nodes, and during the scale up or scale down event, we would just start or stop the machine. So that further brought down the time to 4 minutes. Now GPU VM migration. So instances with GPUs attached cannot be live migrated. They must be set to stop and optionally restart. So what does that mean is, whenever the VMs which had GPUs attached to them were migrated, we would observe a restart on those VMs. And when that restart occurred, all the workers would restart, and that would like hamper the total capacity of the system because they won't accept any request by that time. So, but what compute engine or Google provides is a 60-minute notice before the VM is migrated. So the capacity predictor used to consider this event in the VM, that whether this VM is going to migrate. So this was not a very frequent activity. This used to happen once in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks of time. Rolling deployment. Why we had to do this rolling deployment is because, by the way, we use Rundeck to do the deployments of the Nomad jobs. Rundeck is just a platform where you could run your ad hoc tasks on cloud or on your data centers, right? So since due to the Nomad's drawback of not running multiple workers, we had our own custom script written for running multiple workers. Now, due to that, we had to explicitly handle ourselves the signal handling part, gracefully shutting down the process, and we didn't had a single job. Like we had a common template, but we created a separate job for each node for the deployment. Let me turn the laser pointers, right? For the each node. What that helped us with is we could roll out the new changes during the peak business hours, right? So the strategy was common. I mean the standard one. You provision a new node with the latest Docker image. Once the workers are ready, move to the next node, update the Docker image, and that way, once all the nodes were updated, you bring down the original node. So with this, we didn't hamper the current capacity of the system. Service dependency. So let's say worker is dependent on queue is dependent on Redis, and we had to write like manual remember this dependency flow and make sure Redis is running before we deploy queue, and before we deploy worker the queue is ready, right? So what we came up with was a simple wrapper over Nomad to uh, automate this task. So we came up with the Nomad detail. So I think I remember Shantanu contributing to it, fixing some of the things. So you just map the dependencies in a JSON file, and it would take care of making sure the dependent services are up, right? So SLA. So what we observed was our response times with this setup was approximately 1.5 seconds. But even if you observe spike during the 20 minutes, the interval in which we trigger our capacity predictor, if we observed any anomalies during this time, we observed the the response times to be around 3.5 seconds. So, and we also were running bit additional nodes. So the autoscaler logic was in such a way that even if you error on the higher side, that was fine. I mean, we didn't want an exact solution there. So even if we run a M1 and extra node, that's still okay, right? So that way, we maintained our SLAs. Observability stack, again, we didn't use any extra uh, tool chain for observability. We went with the nomads and consoles telemetry. I'll explain that further. And on top of this observability setup, we had a status page indicating basic indicators regarding the system's health, like service availability, the uptime over a period, right? So in monitoring, these are the service nodes and worker nodes. Every node had Nomad and console client on them. So Nomad gave us both the server metrics as well as the service metrics, like the CPU usage, memory usage, disk, as well as the services running on it and the state of it. So they pushed metrics to the StatST component from Prometheus RAID from StatST and send it to a central monitoring stack, where we had our own custom dashboard setup and alert setup, right? Yeah, so this was the whole setup. In conclusion, as I explained in the monitoring stack, that Nomad and console had inbuilt support for metrics, so we didn't went for something like Node Exporter or any other tool to gather them. It was one-stop solution for us. Nomad again supported external storage or supported portals, because on we could have used solutions like EBS on cloud, but what would we do on premise, right? So we had the same runtime on both the setups. Yeah, raw exec driver, like this was the savior for us. It helped us keep our cost in checks, and basically it gave us the confidence in system due to its operational simplicity. Like the learning curve was definitely low. Anybody could just get started with this things. No complexities, easy to uh, add wrappers on top of it. Uh, so yeah, Nomad or HashiCorp stack definitely helped us gain the confidence in the system, and we could reliably achieve the target of serving like million requests per day. Yeah, that's it from my side. Any questions?
Awesome talk, Sagar. So I have posted if there are
Thanks.
questions in YouTube chat. There don't seem to be
Mhm.
any yet. Though I
Okay.
had one question, a couple of
Mhm.
questions. Would you be posting the slides on the Discuss channel?
Yes, I'll.
And right. So folks can see them all together.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
secondly, okay, we have a minute or two. So how has the post and pre hooks, have they changed anything in your workflows before and after since you invented this first?
Right. Yeah, this is still running in the production. We are not actively making changes to the systems, but yeah, right now, like I saw recent changes into Nomad. We could make changes there, but we haven't done those yet. This system is running as it is as of yet.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Awesome talk, man.
Thanks,
So
thanks.
yes, so with that we will end Sagar's talk, and we will move on to the next talk. So the next talk